2015 was supposed to be a year of prosperity, a year where anybody could make money in the markets. But if we look closely at the statistics, we will see a very different story. Let's look at stocks drop, oil falls, and the global economy sinking. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's look at the Dow Jones, the US stock market declining over 500 points in the last few days alone. And this is obviously going to show you what's going to happen throughout 2015. Of course, it's too early to tell, but this is definitely where it should be heading to reach a level that is realistic, because we know that there is no real good reason for the US stock market to be increasing if it wasn't for the central banks around the world buying up the shares. So if we go back in history and look at 2007, towards the end of 2007, we saw tech stocks being the last and final safe haven for the markets, and a lot of stocks like Google and Apple were really being pumped up. But towards the very last few days, we saw how the market really didn't even like these anymore and began to drop them off, so the prices did decline. And when it came to 2008, we all know where that headed. So what I suggest is that we could be heading into what I'm calling financial crisis part 2. And of course, this is because the financial crisis part 1 never got resolved. They never fixed the issues from the previous crash. So of course, it's just going to lead up into the next one. But of course, they will try and kick the can down the road. It just seems more and more difficult when even the reforms they put in place with Dodd-Frank get repealed. I covered that here on the channel. So let's move on to one of the big issues today, obviously being the price of oil. Let's see how it went down to below $50 a barrel, and we're looking at prices we haven't seen for many years. If it declines a little bit more, these are prices we haven't seen in a decade or more, in fact. So quite interesting to see where this is going to go. The topic of this video is not necessarily to get into oil, but I'm showing you definitely that the price is coming down for different reasons that I've talked about in previous videos. But we are seeing a definite deflation that is occurring in commodities, in many different commodities, and oil is one of those. And it is not for a real sense, because if we look at the amount of real inflation that is being created, the expansion of the money supply, that's real inflation, we know that that is making it somewhere into the economy. And when we look at it overall, the US stock market has been pumped up further than anything else out there. So it's interesting to see the way this is going here. Some things are in a deflation, some things are in an inflation, but we definitely know with the strict definition of inflation, the expansion of the monetary supply, we know that it is definitely in an inflation. This is one thing that I wanted to show, because people are assuming that because the price of oil has declined, that means more money in people's pockets, simply because the gasoline prices have declined. So let's look at this historically over the last few years. We'll go back to December 2013 up until December 2014, and we look a whopping $1 more in your pocket. So that is not exactly what's happening right now. Not really an accurate statement based on what people are saying, how it's putting more money in their pocket. This is not exactly linear. You can't just say the price of oil has declined, gasoline is down, therefore I have more money in my pocket. There are many other issues that we need to look at. What if we look at the food prices still rising, even though gasoline, even though oil is cheaper now? So we see a grand disparity that is being formed in many different sectors. Everything is all out of whack. Nothing makes sense anymore. When you see the classic economists who try to look at this and analyze it and predict it using certain the 200-day moving average and all of this, everything is out of whack. That's why they are unable to figure it out, simply because at this point it really is impossible to create some semblance of reality from the situation. So let's move on right here, where I'm talking about the Dow Jones, and we look at it back in 1929. Now, obviously, we had the dead cat bounce that occurred right there, which you can see. But eventually, it made its way down to about 90%, almost a 90% decline from the top to the bottom. What's interesting to note is that it took about 25 years to get back to its levels that it was previously. And that's the kind of thing that people really refuse to look into. They think that a stock market can come back so quickly, but in fact it could take considerable amounts of time when you have government intervention. That's what's happening here. The more government intervention, the harder it's going to be for a country to get back to where it was. And I'm going to show you a perfect example of that. And oil does relate into this. I'll show you how exactly. But this is just a telling example showing you once again the Dow Jones. Over the past couple of days it did decline, but it has come up considerably in the last, let's say, year or so. But right here, just one example of how bad things can get over a period of time. Let's move on to Germany's index right here, the DAX, as we look at it declining as well. Now, why exactly do they think that it's going down? Well, they're using every excuse in the book, but the fact remains is that Europe, the EU, is falling right now. They're worried about Greece, but that's just one. What about Spain? What about Italy? What about Portugal? You look at the unemployment rates in these countries and you see a big problem. But it's not just those. What about the situation in France and even Germany giving negative yields on their bonds? Where is the positive outlook here? We don't have one because all of the EU is in big trouble right now. This is a global problem that is occurring. It's not just one country. It's not just Greece that's the problem. It really extends further and further out, and that is the viral contagion that I've been speaking about for several years now. Let's move on, where I want to show you where all the money has been heading. JP Morgan versus Citi total derivatives. JP Morgan $65 trillion. Congratulations. But Citi has $70 trillion. So we should crown them the king here. Derivatives, it's excellent. What a great job they have done. There has been no restrictions on the amount of derivatives that have been created. We look at this statistically. Every time I look at it, the amount just seems to go up and up and up, and these companies are able to control this. Then you're looking at levels that are at the same GDP as the whole world, and they are controlling that. If this were to ever need a bailout, it would be impossible to pay back. That's what I'm saying here. When we have a problem, when we have a collapse ahead, this is the ultimate reason why, because we have things like derivatives that are hanging over on top of our heads. I made the symbol of the money GPS, the upside down pyramid, specifically because I know that the derivatives are undoubtedly going to topple the whole system over. I put that on my book cover specifically to show that, because I knew specifically that this is going to happen. Let's move on. As we look at what's happening in Venezuela right now, where we have the ultimate in government control. They have their socialist government, which is supposed to be great for the people, which is supposed to bring prosperity to the people, and the more control they put on the people, the worse the conditions get. Look at this right here. Now you may think they're in line for food or something else that would be considered crucial right here. Perhaps they're giving away free money No, that's not the case. They're actually looking for soap. That's how desperate these people are. They're so stricken in poverty because of the inflation rate peaking out, the last time I checked, at 63%. What exactly do you think is going to happen when you allow this to occur? Well, we are going to have mass upheaval, civil unrest, and you will see this take place not just in Venezuela, but in other countries. I'll just show you another picture right here. We couldn't find shampoo, so we washed our hair with soap. Now there's not even soap, and you can see the empty store shelves right here, and this happens every single time there's a natural disaster. Even in your local city, we saw that happening. What about when riots take place, how they start trashing all of the stores? You can't even access the store should you want to. And here is one example that is occurring today, right now. When you have maximum government intervention, you have a big problem ahead. They can't fix this problem. They cannot fix the problem because they're creating it. When you look at the chart I showed from 1929 and onward, it took them so long to get back to where it was because the government intervened. If you look at the depression that occurred in 1920, most people don't even know that there was a depression in 1920 because it came back in just over 1 year. And why? The government didn't intervene. So it crashed significantly. In fact, their only intervention was actually slashing government spending, if I remember this statistic correctly, by about 60%. A dramatic slash in government spending. They took it all away in a year and a bit. They were back up and running. And then we got into the roaring 20s. Then they started printing the money, and then we led up to the Great Depression. So that is just a little bit of history right here. We're heading in the same direction, and it's obvious that we will be going towards the financial crisis part 2. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I truly appreciate it. I'm looking at all your comments. I haven't had a chance to reply to them in days, but I am reading them all, so I do appreciate all of that. Trust me, I really do. And of course, do not forget to become an insider. It's where I give out all my best intel for free. That's available at themoneygps.com. So just scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.